Right. So, hi everyone. So welcome to our juror talk online. We have invited our juror here, the Miss Lovely Meghan Murray. Actually, we'll go ahead and let her introduce herself to everybody while I share the screen.
Sure. Well, hi. Sorry, I'm not there in person with everyone, but I'm so happy to meet you all virtually. Like TJ said, my name's Meghan Murray. I am a graphic designer. I currently work at a branding agency called Matchstick in Atlanta. I work as a design director there, and I lead a small team creating brands. Yeah, and I've been there about 5 years. Prior to that, I've worked in advertising, and my background is actually in fine art, coincidentally. So I had an interesting path to design. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. It's nice to meet you guys.
That's awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and get this started. Again, thank you again, Megan, for joining us this afternoon. So as you're aware, when we started off this venture, we were actually hesitant because we were actually surprised at the responses that we would get coming up to this exhibition. And as you're aware, we had various submissions for the show. So what are your thoughts, as I go through the pictures in here in a bit, what were your thoughts about this hot topic?
Wow. A loaded question for sure. I mean, like you said, it is a hot topic, and I had a lot of thoughts on this topic prior to viewing the submissions, and I think I had a lot of new thoughts after viewing
Mhm.
all of the submissions for this exhibition, because there's so many things to think about when it comes to women's rights and um, how women's rights have been affected in the past, how they're being affected now, how they might be affected in the future. I mean, there's
Mhm.
things like navigating career and motherhood, patriarchy, lack of representation, trauma, generational trauma, access to equal opportunity, maternal mortality, misogyny, sexism, racism, economic inequality. There's so much. Not to be a
Mhm.
downer. Um, so yeah, I think I felt like it was a really loaded topic that needed to be talked about. And I felt really inspired by seeing a younger generation of designers pour their passion into this topic, with
Mhm.
some really beautiful design. And, ultimately the point of design is to communicate and perhaps affect change. And so it was
Mhm.
really, really lovely to see a set of posters that had this kind of activist spirit and to see how this affects people and what everyone thought about this topic. And people took it all kinds of ways, which I also found really interesting and really inspiring. I
Mhm.
felt like maybe the top themes were around women's right to choose, inequality and social injustice, but there was a really broad spectrum
Mhm.
of the way that people touched on this topic.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. I think when we were looking at the submissions together, we were not only inspired, but we were taken aback because this was a great response to this hot topic. I think it happened last year when my friend Victoria Cook and I we were trying to figure out, well, what do we want to do for this poster show? And Miss Victoria can also chime in anytime. But when we were thinking about the show, we were thinking, well, what kind of topic could we do? And we heard about the Roe Wade situation, and we thought, you know what, that is something that I bet a ton of people would like to get their hands on and speak up their mind, so to say. So we'll go ahead and start talking about our top three posters that we thought were absolutely I wouldn't say not only phenomenal, but they also kind of start making you think about the message itself. I could go ahead and actually share what this. So this one was created by Mina Khalili, and this is her statement regarding her posters. With these posters, I explore the importance of voting, female motherhood, and the immigrant experience. With our bodies on every ballot, voting is the biggest thing we can do to support the most intimate, private moments in the lives of those who may reproduce. I am a woman. I am the daughter of an Iranian immigrant, and I am the mother of a child residing in the American Southeast. Language matters to all. What are your thoughts on that, Megan?
Yeah, this was obviously one of my favorites in the show, being top three. I think I'll speak first about the aesthetics of the poster and then a little bit more about the meaning.
Absolutely.
Aesthetically, this poster really captured me because it was more analog than you typically see, and especially from the set, a lot of us use our new digital tools with design, but design can really be created outside of the computer just as legitimately. And this I felt so inspired by because it had some kind of like tactile feel. It felt very human. It had a
Mhm.
human touch. I mean, and forgive me, I'm interpreting this in my own way, but I
Sure.
feel like this is a palm print. Wish I
Okay.
had the artist here to verify, but I see like the lines in a palm. I see like a handprint and a human touch here, which to me spoke to the potential generational trauma
Mhm.
that a family could suffer by losing their right to choose. Perhaps like how that sets back an entire family, entire generation, how that affects future generations. And then in addition to that, just giving that like that human touch, I liked how everything felt kind of shattered almost. Like it felt the poster has a bit of anxiety to it. And again, maybe I'm pouring my own
No,
feeling
I love
into this.
hearing this. Yeah, I keep going.
It's not a perfect grid. It's a very active composition. It's layered. The photos are spliced. So to me, it gives me a sense of like unease or anxiety or like something's broken or something's lost,
Mhm.
which depending on where you stand on the topic, something has been lost with Roe being overturned. So that's what I took away from this poster, and what I really appreciated about it visually is that tactile kind of analog approach to design, really capturing the limited color palette as well. Really striking.
Oh yeah, no, I could definitely see the analog touch in here. I think when we were looking at this, I think what draw my attention the most was I think those are the sticks of you. I might be getting this wrong. I think it's ovulation kits. Or pregnancy tests. I can't see this clearly, but I think what was interesting about that is that nobody really wants to touch base on the topic, especially about this, because I know a lot of people have strong inclinate feelings about how women should be controlled on their bodies, especially when it comes to making a decision about foregoing pregnancy or whatnot. So with this, looking at the screen, it just seems interesting that, especially when my students got to see this up close, they were very drawn to this idea where everybody's kind of in your face, getting that uneasy tension that nobody wishes to talk about. It's almost like a taboo feeling, but it's there. It's not that it's nobody should be quiet about it. It does need to be discussed in some way or another. Well, I don't know. That's just also me. Maybe you
I
guys feel the
agree.
same way. Yeah. I'm also going to throw this over to my students who are already in the room. Do you guys have the same feeling or want to put in your take in it as well?
I feel like it can also closely resemble a broken family
Okay.
because there's multiple kids, meaning that there are multiple children, like of all different sorts of ages.
Mhm.
And seeing that this comes from a place about women's rights, it can be interpreted as the family that she has will come out broken,
Oh,
even
okay.
though she has tried her best to succeed
Mhm.
and achieve better for herself and her family.
Okay. Do you guys see it the same way or do you guys have different approaches?
I think it's a fragmentation also explains like how women's rights have been disarrayed a little bit. Like it had like the confusion of it. It really makes it disorderly on purpose that way.
So I don't know if you were able to hear that. Were you able to hear that slightly?
Yeah,
Okay.
brilliant takes by both. I
Oh
agree.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh man, the part about like a broken family for sure. And I think that's what I meant to articulate in generational trauma, just put way better. Like how that affects children, how that affects parents, generation after generation. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's very smart.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in before we check out, the next poster?
Well,
You can speak loud.
it's really funny for this topic to be such a hot topic where people are encouraged to speak up with their own opinion, but it seems like the dominant opinion unanimously is that this is directly connected to repression, when there are a lot of women who don't consider this to be a repressive part of womanhood. And it's funny because that stance of people in favor of overturning is not being discussed or represented with the equality that people want. There's kind of this assumption that if someone should speak up, it's in favor of fighting repression, but the opposing perspective is also valid because everyone does have their own standpoint. It seems like that point is actually encouraged to not speak up, ironically.
Yeah. Sounds about right. All right, well, I could go ahead and keep moving on, or we can keep staying at the poster, Megan, your call.
No, we can certainly move on to the second. Thank you guys for chiming in with your thoughts. And Mina, if you're here, just lovely work. I really, really, really like this design a lot. Good job.
Mhm. All right, so this is the next one done by Sarah Tech, and I can also read out her statement. She says, I've been investigating pattern making's historical relationship to women's work using typography as a medium to create social commentary. These pieces push the boundaries of legibility and readability using typography to make the pattern, hiding messages in the patterns. Many women's pattern designers' work is also hidden inside their homes, behind manufacturers' names, men they've worked for, or husbands or partners they've worked with. The work's experimental relationship with language and typography questions our ability to look closer and more critically at this art form's complicated history, and to give recognition to the overlooked women who make the work. Now, that's fascinating. So what are your thoughts, Megan?
Well, I'm not sure if I should mention, but Sarah is one that submitted like a triptych.
Yes.
And so I do feel like a lot of the power behind this selected poster, which is my favorite of the three, does come from that triptych of posters. And first, I'll just say I love rule breaking in design, so I was very excited to see
Mhm.
several applicants break the rules and do more than one poster or even a video. Which I know we'll
Yeah.
get to next one. So that's definitely what drew me initially to Sarah's work here. And then what kept me around is trying to read it, which I think a lot of, I will say a lot of success for me in art or design comes from how much time I want to spend looking at a piece and like
Mhm.
deciphering it and like engaging with it. And I had to engage quite a bit with Sarah's work. And I think that that's a testament to the work, because if it was, not visually pleasing, I might move on and not really worry about what does it say.
Mhm.
But with Sarah's work, I found it really beautiful and also informative, because there are
Yeah.
words hidden here, but really engaging, which is, I think, like the best compliment you can give a design is how well does the message engage the viewer. So for this one, I'm pretty sure I'm right that it's a shadow repeated here. This one I found the hardest to read of all. One that said faces was definitely the easiest, but I read the word shadow here, which ties directly back into Sarah's artist statement, in the shadows. Thank you, Sarah. So it says in the shadows. To me, that tied back to her artist statement saying that women are often not seen and their work goes unnoticed or uncredited. So that made sense to me. What I also interpreted from this, which may not have been intentional, but I started thinking about this like network of women across the world. Like we all are connected in a singular struggle that everyone experiences differently, but we're connected in our gender, our life experiences, what have you. So I saw this kind of like network of a struggle, and I saw a lot of beauty in what's hidden here. So the work goes unnoticed by these women. But it's really, really beautiful and really valid.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I really enjoyed this. There's so many fun things happening here with the negative space. Like there's these hearts that are made by the mirrored S's. Perhaps interpret that to be like the love that women pour into their work. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. And it's so different from the first one because it is so gridded in a way. Like it's very graphic and structured, where that first one was like almost fine art in a way, like very analog, like I said, collage free. This one is
Mhm.
like the opposite of free almost. It almost feels like it's being constrained. And maybe that too is speaking to the work conditions of women.
Mhm. I like how you said it, the hidden network that goes unnoticed. I think that does speak a lot to women, especially if their work doesn't get credited well, whether it's design or art related. Now, since Sarah Tech is actually online, if she's able to, if you have a microphone, would you be able to come and chat in with us and, tell us even more why you've done this approach in your set of posters, if you can.
Hi. Well, first of all, I am so humbled and so honored by your comments and just being included in the show and then being one of the top three is just very, very humbling. So a lot of my work has to deal with being a woman who lived her life, most of her life, although I've taught for many years as an adjunct, but now I'm full-time, working in the shadows of a man in a branding agency. And as art director and creative director, we would walk into a room and present. And at the end of the day or the next presentation, I say this comes from a very personal place, where it started is that nobody would remember my name. It was the marketing guru in the company, who they would crowd around, they would ask questions to, they would look at during the presentation. And I teach a very interesting course in color theory for graphic designers. And so I was researching color and pattern making across various cultures. And so part of my research led me to this experience of that this is all connected. And when you spoke about this network of women connected globally, I think it crosses cultures, it crosses occupations, it crosses socioeconomic boundaries, even, of us not being given the credit for what we do. And this is a pattern that we see throughout the world. So it's all very connected and it's all very associative. I'm making many, many different pieces. I'm working right now actually with some gouache paintings and handwritten texts over them in graphite, and then also working digitally, because I have a lot of things that I want to say about this.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I was just checking the chat box. Sorry.
Yeah,
Were you going to
somebody
say
said
anything, Megan?
they weren't
Yeah.
able to hear me anymore.
Oh, I was able to hear now.
I was able to hear you the whole time.
Okay, sorry about that for those that couldn't hear.
Mhm.
I love hearing from the designers because that just added so much more meaning to my loose interpretation of it first. I mean, one thing that you just said that stuck out to me is you're researching these like pattern makers, but I love the idea that like literally it is a pattern of behavior that happens
behavior.
across like,
Yes.
oh, that's so smart. And I love that interpretation. And also, yes, talking about feeling in the shadow of a male superior is an experience I think is for sure shared among many women.
And in our industry, it has certainly gotten better, but you know, I mean, even the research, even in the academic industry, if you look at even evaluations of two professors that teach the same class, and one's a female and one's a male, or they could co-teach, you know, you will definitely see that the male gets recognized with higher evaluations than men do. And my apologies to any of the male professors who may be on this call, but it is a pattern, and one that I think needs to be made a little more public. So.
Yeah, no, that's really great to hear from your side as well, Sarah. I'm gonna go ahead and even ask these questions to my students. What are your initial reactions after hearing, straight from the designers?
I'm going to say it just reminds me of like how a spider sort of like does an intricate web, but it sort of reminds me of when I look at it a little bit.
Mhm.
Like, and it also reminds me of like women's art and history, whether that be writing or like art in general, like how it can get lost in time or eventually we didn't even know it was made by them, you know?
Mhm. All right, yeah. By any chance were you guys able to hear it? I can have her repeat it again if needed. Okay, cool.
I
Great.
could hear you. It's great.
Anybody else want to chime in on that as well?
With the way that she was saying that it's all connected, like that we all go through this thing that's all connected, it reminds me like similar to the spider web thing, but more of like a that's what I feel like the internet looks like, if that makes sense, like a bunch of wires that are all connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so just similar to that, it makes it feel more industrialized. And how she's saying, like in this industry, women, people, like you won't remember my name, but you'll probably remember like one of the men's name around. And with it getting lost like that, it just connects like what she said to me.
Okay, all right. You feel more inclined to it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's great to hear your thoughts, though. I mean, I know not a lot of folks like to talk about it, as we've mentioned it. It's always more so in the light, always seen as taboo for some odd reason, but it needs to be discussed in some way. It needs to come to the light somehow. One last thought from you guys.
I have one.
Yes, sorry.
You don't mind? I actually, the second I saw it, it almost reminds me of a tapestry or some type of rug. And to me, it almost feels traditional in the feminist sense, where women have always been at the forefront of textiles and making clothing or things in the home that have always gotten kind of overlooked as just we have and they're there. And it hasn't really been recognized how much work goes into the intricacy and detail of those things. And we've really had to fight for getting that recognition over the last few decades, centuries or so. And so it feels like you said in your artist summary that it was all connected, and like women have always worked in those things together and worked in fields together, and like we've always been here, and so it feels very much like a testament to like those traditions.
Okay, no, that's great. Thanks, Skylar.
I
Mikey,
would love to just respond to Skylar for a second, because I have a larger artist statement on this work, which also includes my interest in the etymology of the word text and its relationship to textile and context and texture, and so very much thinking about weaving that etymological relationship together. So your comment was very astute. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, sorry about that. Mikey, go ahead.
I just really I like how everything is supposed to be connected. I just want to I really appreciate how it was created design wise, because I'm seeing there's so many shapes, and just the everything trying to create it, it took a lot of time to be able to have everything, make sure that everything looks like foreshadowed, perfect, the way the word shadow comes out as it's supposed to be.
Mhm. So some kind of strange architecture that's like
Yeah,
there.
it's like not like a blueprint, maybe it's a different word,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's just the connections, the way it all flows together. It's really amazing.
So you're talking to my typography students and they're getting really inspired about like how they can incorporate letter forms as shapes to create a really complex imagery of sorts. So they're getting converted in the process. Is the best way to describe it. That's our goal, right? The graphic design professors. Anyway, so any last minute thoughts? I know I'm also checking in on the chat box, so I apologize for everybody if the sound gets lost. I promise you I will send the recording just in case. I can move on to the next poster, Megan, unless you have last minute thoughts.
One last maybe question for Sarah. Thinking about color, I think one of your students in the room made a great point about this feeling like the internet in a way, like it feels digital. And for me, that comes from the color a little bit, like this dark background, that like brighter green popping through the lighter blue. Like there's something that feels very like digital about it in color. But then Skylar also made that great point about it like feeling like an ornamental rug, which I guess usually is more warm in color. So anyway, I'm curious if Sarah had some rationale behind why she chose these colors. Any thoughts there?
Oh, yes, I'd like to hear this.
Well, one of the things I do want to say is I am in a blue period right now. Like everything I'm doing is, I feel like Picasso at the moment and going through my blue period. But there was something very interesting to me about having that darkness contrasted against these the beauty that sort of shows through. And so, you know, blue, while it's a beautiful blue, it's also a very humbling blue, you know, and so it comes from that humbling sort of inner quiet place where, you know, you don't need the recognition, but yet then we have this brightness that we get from making the work, you know. So those are some of the things I was thinking about, and yes, I'm everything is in a similar palette these days. So
Understood.
that's just where my head is at in making work, because it's all of a similar theme. So
Yeah. One thought I just had is like that these colors are maybe more traditionally masculine, arguably blue and green. And like, would it be like, is one take about it that like we're literally behind the shadows of this like male color palette, perhaps? And then also thinking about it as like the modern interpretation of those like ornamental rugs. And maybe switching the colors to feel more digital, more internet as like a modern interpretation of this like ongoing problem. Just a couple of random thoughts anyway. Great work.
nice, very nice. I hadn't thought of it, but I actually really like those connections a lot. So, and I love it when people bring, you know, additional meaning to the work. I think that
Yeah,
enriches it too. So thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. All right. So let me go ahead and show our also favorite poster. This was also a set. And I apologize if I butcher this name. You can call me out. Okay. So this is by Hyena Num. This is her statement. Blanche Armwood was an educator, activist, and the first African-American woman in Florida to graduate from an accredited law school. She was born in the era when women's status was low. It was when legally and socially sanctioned privileges and rights were given to only white Americans. She devoted her life to pursuing equal rights for Black and women. These poster design series are developed to commemorate her relentless effort to achieve equity in humanities. By bringing her life into these poster series, I hope viewers remember her, someone who otherwise could have been forgotten in history. right? And we do actually have Hyena in the call, and then you could probably chat in here and let us know if your microphone is, working or not. But we can like listen into Megan's thoughts about this.
I love this one. If we can call it one. I mean, it's like a ton of mini posters into one, which again, I love rule breaking. I love the video. I love the triptych set.
Mhm.
I chose this one as one of the top 3 because I learned a lot from this poster, and I did not know Blanche Armwood before viewing this poster, but I do now, and I spent a really long time on Wikipedia after
Mhm.
after viewing these, which again, I feel like a success of design is engagement and learning. Like it's about the message, and this is full of information. So I found it to be really informative, educational, engaging, and beautiful. The type work is stunning. I mean, it's the same format over and over again. I'm talking about like the little tiles in the one bigger poster. It's
Mhm.
that same format, but every single layout is fresh and new, but it all comes together. It really is just really good type. Um, and then as far as like conceptual natures, I don't know if this was the case, but I did think about like the nature of equity being displayed across all of these like equal tiles in the one poster. And perhaps that was a way of illustrating the idea of equity. And then color palette, I see skin tones in there. The orange is a really like striking active color. That maybe feels like it ties back into that activist spirit. But yeah, it's overall really eye-catching, really informative, and just great type. So well done. I'd love to hear what the designer has to say about this work.
Yeah, I think Hyena's here online. I think she switched to maybe her phone. Um, well, as she tries to hopefully let us know that she's able to communicate with us, I can maybe toss this over back to the students. What do you guys think about this?
I like how this is a motion graphic instead of just a typical single image poster.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way that it gets revealed with this, with each panel, it's like, since I don't think a lot of people know about this person at all, I sure didn't before this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's representing revealing something that was kind of hidden or lost to time, or
Mhm.
lost to just no one ever talking about her or something.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, that idea of a revelation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I probably should explain this part for our designer. So this was actually a 3 set posters originally. And this was going to be printed like one large poster, and you would flip the panels. So it will reveal the second poster. So it was never meant to be a motion graphic. It was just more like an idea thought. Obviously, with our limitations in the gallery, this is what we would come up with. But yeah, it's really great how when at least Ms. Nam was explained to me like the process before I sent this over to Megan. It was intriguing to see how, as you were saying, not a lot of people knew about it. So I wonder if that was kind of the intention, where you're kind of revealing the story of somebody nobody ever talks about, because it's kind of hidden behind the mist, so to speak, or at least in this case, just kind of hidden away, covered, never thought of before anymore, because everybody is moving forward over different things. Any other thoughts from the students?
I like how the color and type had emphasis to detail wasn't like important about the person, like the poster on the left corner at the bottom says the first black female, like it stands out against the brown or orange color, it appears like.
Right. Somebody said in here, the orange is a natural color, but it also refuses to be ignored. That is definitely something to consider. Maybe we can now toss this back over to those online. I know we got Skylar to, express her thoughts, but anyone else can share even their analysis when they look at this. Don't be shy. everybody doesn't want to talk at this point. Well, what do you think, Megan? Any more additional things that came to mind when you're looking at this?
Gosh, no, but I love that note about like revealing
Mhm,
like history that refuses to be lost. Like I love that take.
mhm,
It really is very fun to hear the way that everyone interprets art differently, design differently.
mhm,
Yeah, there's so much here.
mhm.
But nothing more for me to add on this one other than just brilliant work, and thank you for sharing Blanche Armwood with me.
Yeah, no worries at all. So we kind of left some more time in the end. I'm just allowing, oh, hold on, there's more to this. Somebody said here, I think it's definitely interesting how it's presented, like the bust or just the image of this person genuinely means so much. Would you want to comment on that?
Yeah, or is this person, so are you saying like it's almost like a statue, like a head statue, and maybe those historically weren't made as much for women? Actually, not sure.
I think that's what they're saying. I'm also waiting for Sin to probably add more. Yes, that is
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Yeah, it is. It maybe memorializes Blanche in a way that history. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Let me go ahead. And like I said, I did leave some time in the end for everybody to ask even more questions. We can open up the floor to those online as well. If you had thoughts or questions about the exhibition, let's hear about it.
I'll ask a good question for Megan, which is we have a lot of students listening to you. And a lot of times we encourage students to enter juror shows, but they're not sure if they'll be taken seriously or whatever. And there are students represented in this show. So I would love it if you would explain sort of the juror process to students, so it's not such a mystery.
Yeah, just how I go about selecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, first I spent time just and to be honest, I had a PDF. I didn't have like the beauty of walking into the gallery to see them all, printed large, which they look fantastic. I was so excited to see all the photos of the space. And that definitely puts them in their best light. But I spent time with each poster and each artist statement, read through each one and read through them all about 5 times through. And I start by selecting like what rises to the surface rather than the opposite, which ones kind of rise to the surface. So I started out kind of refining down this top 3. And like I said, for me, I'm looking for, did this communicate something to me? It's a bonus if I learned something. Like I do design as a communication tool. So it first and foremost should be communicating something, and it should be beautiful and engaging. So that was kind of my criteria. And then secondly, I'm asking myself, how successfully does this specific design address the topic of the show, which is women's rights? And then second to that, I had to do some research of my own to say, like, what are the biggest challenges facing women in the US today, also internationally. So there's a lot to dig through. And I think I kind of wrapped my own thoughts around what the conversation was, and then looked for a diverse range of topics and representations amongst the exhibition. And then also things like thinking through, do we have a good balance of aesthetics when you're curating a show? So that's something I look for. And even looking at our top 3, I think they're wildly different, and I think that's really exciting for a diverse show. So we've got, one that felt like textured and gritty and analog, messy even. The second one from Sarah felt very like structured, clean, intricate, detailed. And then the fourth, I felt like put a really heavy emphasis on typography. Even though Sarah's is literally all made of typography, it feels more visual. And that fourth one really felt strong on the like typographic communication piece. And I felt like that would round out the set. So yeah, I'm thinking about, is it engaging? Is it communicating well? Is it diverse amongst the body of work as a whole for the exhibition? And does it successfully tackle the topic of the prompt, which is women's rights? I hope that answered your question, but if it didn't, hit me with a follow-up.
Also to help Megan out, it was blind selection, so we removed the names. So just keep it, fair game.
Yes.
Just in case if people were
Yeah.
like wondering.
It only had the artist statement, didn't have a name or a photo or anything, just the poster and the artist statement.
So there was 2 questions. I already answered the first one, but just in case everybody didn't hear about this, I'm planning to send out a digital catalog to everyone by this Friday. That is in my to-do list. My second question, it says here, how many entries did we receive? Oh my gosh, Megan, I don't remember. There was a set,
Was
so
it
each
like
submission had 3. We're thinking
Yeah,
about.
that's hard to say because, like you said, yes, a lot of people had like multiples for.
If
I
I was
feel like
gonna
it was-
say, if it
Oh,
was
you know what?
individual works, it was probably, maybe Megan can help now.
Yeah, I actually have the submissions pulled up and I can look at the number 36. Well, there was 36, but that doesn't include the duplicates. So we could say like 30,
Yeah,
probably.
we had 30 submissions. It was a tough call, definitely for Megan. So,
It really was tough. Like, it is tough because everything's valid, and I can see beauty in everything. So making the cuts is much harder than choosing the favorites, I think.
yeah, and it would have been beautiful and amazing to maybe like plaster all the walls with posters, but I could already tell Victoria's like, hold on, wait a minute. So yes, we will eventually get there, but yeah, it was definitely a tough call logistics wise, but at the same time, if it was, a different scenario, that would have been great to like even see more than 20 posters ultimately. So here's another question. What happens to the posters after the show? I guess Victoria can take this, perhaps, maybe. It says, what happens to the posters after the show?
So they are stickied to the wall. So when we take them down, they're kind of a temporary medium, because when we take them down, they're going to be not so pristine anymore. So we will have the digital files. So that's what we'll archive, are the digital files.
I have a question for you. As an educator and thinking if we were to try something like this at our school, did you apply for a grant to do all the printing and all that, or is that just straight out of your department budget?
I would say it was from our budget department. When we ventured on this idea, exploring how do we create our first graphic design poster show, and maybe it's not just only a poster show, but as is, we were thinking about, well, how do we get the works up ready to go without having to worry about shipping cost, liability, framing, and all that stuff. And Victoria has been working with me, and she's seen my amazing students, like how they execute their work. So we thought, why don't we try this out, see what happens with no initial goal, like thinking if it was going to go bad or if it was going to go worse. You won't know till you try. That was really our motto as we ventured off into this idea. I think Victoria can add more to it, but that's really how we were thinking about it. I think the hard part though, and Victoria can attest to this, I think the hardest part was how to get the call out there. At least for me, in my part, I tried my hardest. I tried sending it out to all AIGA, try to type Directors Club just to see if they would be interested, even the Society of Typographic Arts, just to see if who would be interested. So it was almost like shooting in the dark, see who would, be more interested in this, especially in trying to explore the topic itself. So hopefully we kind of gave you some pointers I'm pretty sure you would do an amazing job doing it that way. But yeah, we also have to think about our logistics as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure that sticky posters will be the way we do it next time. I think Tiffany can attest that installing them was a challenge.
Yes, we had 4 people, and I have my federal work study in the back, 4 people trying to measure out the height and using the leveler, and we still were struggling, especially on the glass. That was, we almost took down the glass door, by the way. In one of the pictures you saw, that was glass. You could see the whole panel just getting off the door. It's like, never mind, we're just gonna take our time with this.
We might use magnets next time.
Probably magnets. Anyway,
Thanks.
good question.
It's great because, you know, I don't often see calls for art for graphic graphic design. And I love the fact that you're doing this graphic design show, and I think it'll inspire other people, and it elevates the whole field to be sort of showcased and displayed.
Absolutely. Well, we try with the galleries to work with the professors, and it has been, I mean, it's been much easier to do it, of course, for painting and ceramics, printmaking. But when it comes to graphic design, we've tried a few different things, and I think this is probably the most successful. Although we have had others, and we had entries from all over the country, which was also really cool to see.
All right, really good questions for us. Any more that you can think about? All right, well, if that's pretty much it, thank you so much again for joining us this afternoon. If you guys want to stick around and even ask more questions outside the recording, you can. My students are excited to talk with you guys, chat with you guys. You have last minute things before we close this out?
Do you have any advice for any young designers?
Good question. Do you have any advice for designers of tomorrow? She's like, what?
Just generally, gosh,
Okay, question.
that's a very open question. Let me think about that for a moment.
You stumped her.
Well, there's so many places I could take that question. Like there's technology advice, career advice. Okay, back up. I think one thing that I recommend for all designers is to stay really connected to what's happening in our industry and culture. Like the more in tune with culture you can be, I think the more relevant you are as a designer. Which gets challenging as we get older, I'm realizing, but staying in touch with what's happening in the industry is important, and what's happening in culture. That's one piece of advice. And kind of tacked onto that is what's changing in technology, because it will keep changing. Like I'm already seeing AI, and you all probably speak about this more than I do on a day-to-day basis being in school, but I think myself being a designer now, watching what's happening in AI terrifies me a bit. And I think the more connected you can be to what's changing and evolving with technology, also the more relevant you'll be as a designer. And that's not to say that you have to adopt every new technology, but you do need to know how it's affecting your industry. So always learning, like being a lifelong learner, I guess is like my biggest piece of advice. Like be moldable, be coachable, and continue your learning after school. I take classes almost every weekend. So, I mean, that's not to say like you have to, work and do school for the rest of your life. I think it's like a fun thing for most people to learn a new skill, but things are always changing, especially if you go into kind of like the digital world of design. It changes day to day, the tools. So yeah, be a lifelong learner, stay in touch with culture. Those are my 2 headlines.
Awesome, really great question. Well, thank you so much again for joining us online. You guys are free to go. Megan and I are just gonna chill here in the chat. So have a good rest of your afternoon, everyone. Bye. Thanks again.
Bye. Thank you all so much.